The WAFB Podcast Network is sponsored by Neighbors Federal Credit Union.
Hey, good morning, Jacques. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm talking to Garth Brooks.
Entering his second year as the LSU head football coach.
It was the only way I could get a foot in the door.
Joined by the icon, Kim Mulkey. Hey, Coach, great to see you.
Jacques Talk is sponsored by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp and Kuyon's Cajun Barbecue.
All right, we're in the WAFB studio today with Koki Riley. He covers LSU football and LSU baseball for The Advocate, NOLA.com. Koki, thanks for coming down to Channel 9.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Koki doing a great job covering the Tigers. Great is not what I would use to describe the second half of what happened in College Station. It was kind of a fascinating collapse across the board. It just seemed LSU collectively lost their composure in front of 109,000 fans there in College Station, getting outscored in the second half 31-6 for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, multitude of reasons. I thought defensively it was just the inability to have any sort of preparation or the inability just to simply adjust to Marcel Reed and that zone read offense that Texas A&M was running, and to just be that ill-equipped and that ill-prepared to face a running quarterback in that zone read and that extra, and having to figure out how to tackle that extra man. That was pretty baffling. Given that this is this isn't high school football. So I mean, quite frankly, like A&M threw two passes with Reed at quarterback in that game. They completed 8 passes all game and scored 38 points. So it was really stunning performance, and really for most of that third quarter and for all that fourth quarter. And then on offense, it was a lot of the issues were a product of how
can't run the ball.
Yeah, the inability to run the ball, the inability to find easy buttons on offense. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Well, I think the LSU defense suffered from the fact that they were doing so well, meaning Connor Wegman, he gets yanked out of the game because, quite honestly, watching the game from the field, shooting the game from the field, it appeared the game was too big for him. And it also appeared that Texas A&M and their play calling were kind of trying to hide their quarterback a little bit, and you can't do that in a game of this magnitude. And so finally they yank him, and what made the Garrett Nussmeier first interception kind of so damaging as he rolled left and he throws it back right is that they put Marcel Reed at the 10, 12-yard line. He immediately comes in, takes the snap, runs in the end zone. He has immediate confidence. He scores a touchdown the first time he touches the ball. And it just kind of it snowballed from there, combined with the fact that LSU can't kick a field goal all of a sudden. I mean, they weren't chip shot field goals. They were in the high 40s, I believe. But he misses 2, and then the third one they don't even get off the ground because the holder's looking back at the kicker and the ball snapped early. And Coach Kelly calls that ridiculous, and he said it'll never's a strong word, Koki.
Yeah, it is a very strong word.
It'll never happen again.
That was very notable when he said never, and he said it with a certain, I guess, gusto and seriousness that you don't always see from Coach Kelly when he's talking about mistakes that his team makes during a game. It's like, oh, we're going to work on this. Oh, we know we have to get better at this. But there was just sort of a intensity to that made you really feel. And there was even, I think, like during the broadcast, they caught Kelly talking to it was Peyton Todd or Slade Roy, I think it was Peyton Todd, about how you have to clean up the bleeping operation. So
our videographer Darren DeQuano, he followed, I think, Slade off the field. I think Coach Kelly came to him on the field. Slade continued to walk. Coach Kelly followed him to the bench, and the conversation, which was a one-sided conversation, continued there. To me, it was kind of fascinating how different groups and players who had been praised and had been built up, this was really a humbling game. Like Damian Ramos, for example, the week before, he's the SEC Specialist of the Week, right? He goes 4 for 4, and Coach Kelly praises him. And Blake Baker's doing a great job with the defense, and not to say he still isn't, but obviously I'm not sure if they wanted Greg Penn to come out and say we didn't prepare for that. I don't know if there's some media coaching before that to not admit that on camera, or it's just honesty. Were you surprised he said that we didn't prepare much for it or didn't know much about it?
Yeah, that was surprising to me, to just like outright admit that you didn't prepare for. Sure, he's the backup quarterback, but he started in 3 games. He's won games for them, SEC games for them on the road, and some would argue in College Station, and they're probably having this conversation right now, that Marcel Reed's actually the better quarterback for this team moving forward. And after what you saw in the A&M in that LSU game, there's definitely at least somewhat of an argument for it, but it's just a lot easier to play quarterback when when your offense can run the same play over and over and over again, or at least the same variation of the same play, and get good results just pressing the spam button on that zone read. Again, they threw 2 passes with Reed the entire time he was in the game, and it wasn't like he was in the game for 2 or 3 series. He was in the game for almost half the time. So it's just absolutely, to me, it's inexcusable to be that just ill-prepared and ill-coached to, just not be able to adjust at all to that zone read. Maybe for a drive or so, for a couple of plays, like I understand that, right? It can be a little bit jarring at first, but to just never not prepare for it during the week, and then to look so ill-equipped during the game. It's not like they haven't faced. It's not like these players haven't faced zone read, haven't seen zone read before, or have not played against offenses that will run that play against them. So it's pretty mind-boggling, to be honest.
He only threw 2 passes, but one of them was right after LSU cut the lead to 28-23, and he throws one right down the seam for, I think, 48 yards. Who picked up the defender and threw him down? That was some Vince McMahon stuff. Was that Zy Alexander?
I think it was Zy Alexander.
Yeah.
Came across the other side of the field, now that I'm remembering, because the safety didn't pick up the go route in the slot. So yeah.
So that was only one of the 2 passes, but it was definitely kind of a backbreaker. And if you're moving forward, if you're Texas A&M, we don't cover A&M, but just real quick, for those who are saying, well, they found their quarterback. Well, the other team's going to have a whole week to prepare, and when you're starting from the get-go, you're going to have to throw more than 2 passes to win a game.
And Reed, when they've had to throw the ball with Reed, they have had at least some success, enough success to win on the road against Florida comfortably, enough success to have a winning formula, I guess. So it is going to be a real conversation there as to what they're going to do at that quarterback spot. Not just because of what Reed gives them as a runner, but also the struggles that Wegman had in that first half that we can sort of get into.
Well, and also I just want to say real quick that the atmosphere at Texas A&M. Look, before the game, I'm looking up. I'm trying to find an empty seat in this giant place. I didn't find one. I mean, it was totally packed. Everybody who had a ticket used it themselves or found someone else to use it. It was completely packed. And look, they get cracked on for some of their stuff. Is it a little unusual, all the this and the that and the hopping around on one foot and all those cheers and stuff? I mean, it's a different thing. A lot of people call them weird and this and that. There's a strong military presence there, and a lot of people who be doing great things for our country and whatnot. They fire that cannon, which still surprises you. You jump, and they're firing it too much for LSU fans' sake. But I will say that they definitely delivered a passionate atmosphere, and they made a difference in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I don't think most people know this, but at the press box at Texas A&M, when it gets loud enough or it gets rowdy enough, it actually starts to shake.
Yes.
And part of it's because you're at the very, very top of the stadium. So, like, even if you can't hear as well up there because you're glassed in that press box, you can feel the crowd quite literally. So
there's a sign in the press box that says press box may sway or something like that.
Don't be alarmed if the press box sways. Like, everyone gets this, like, there's like a sheet of paper. It's like, welcome to Kyle Field's press box or whatever. And then part of it in like bold letters is like, the press box will shake. Don't be alarmed.
Right.
Which is kind of unique.
And that press box, like you said, it's like 100 feet from the moon. I mean, it is way up there. LSU can't run the ball. And so, Koki, one time is funny. I'm down there, and they handed it off to Caden Durham, and I was like, oh, man, that was a big run. That was a big gainer, and it was 3 yards. Because I just gotten so used to them barely getting back to the line of scrimmage as a chore, I mean, even when they sneaked it for their final touchdown, I mean, it was just pulling teeth to get, 6 inches or whatever. So this offensive line, all during the summer we talked about, I felt like they were going to be the strength of the team, that they could, dictate games. They would ball control. They would be able to dominate. If the defense was struggling, the offense could stay on the field because the offensive line would be able to, possess the ball and control things. And, I can't break down football like Gordy Rush and T-Bob Hebert and Jacob Hester. But I do know that since the Nichols game, there were some red flags that, hey, why can't we run the ball? And it had gotten better. But last week, obviously, I think your two running backs, Josh Williams and Caden Durham, I think they got 38 yards on 22 carries or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of the main reasons why this sets them behind the sticks. It puts them in a lot of third and long situations, and it forces Garrett Nussmeier to feel like he has to make a play, which is how you see the really terrible first interception and the second interception. And when you're dropping back that many times, you're just putting yourself more at risk to have these sort of mistakes. And they need easy answers for Garrett Nussmeier, and a lot of that will come down to getting into those third and shorts and getting into less third downs in general. And running the ball is one of the main ways to sort of get out of these situations where he feels like he has to do everything all at once. And in some of these games, I think it's been schematic. Some of these games, it's just been what the defense is giving them in terms of how many guys that they're putting into the box. But in this game, honestly, I thought it was they just got beat at the line of scrimmage physically, and really, on both sides of the ball, I thought A&M was just a much more physical team at the line of scrimmage. But LSU's offense was able to do enough with its playmakers and force A&M into enough mistakes on the other side of the ball that they led 17-7 despite that. But especially obviously in that second half, they got dominated at the line of scrimmage, especially when it came to the running game. And once A&M was able to sort of contain, once Nussmeier made a couple of mistakes and they forced him into some more third and long situations, that's when they were able to send extra blitzers, and that's why you saw Nussmeier in so much pressure, especially in that fourth quarter.
You mentioned physicality, so I've got to mention that Tommy Moffitt obviously was the strength and conditioning coach for the LSU football for over 2 decades. Now, towards the end, there was some criticism, and I don't know if he deserved criticism or not when there's a rash of injuries, guys getting hurt. It's just like, okay, the offense stinks, blame the offensive coordinator. Defense stinks, blame the defensive coordinator. Everyone's getting hurt, blame the strength coach. I don't know if that's what people assess when they see that. But he's been there less than a year, so I don't know how much impact he's had. But if you talk to the people at A&M and some of the players, they feel like his impact has been pretty significant. And it would speak to what you're talking about if they got pushed around a little bit.
I mean, Tommy Moffitt won 3 national championships, right, as the strength coach at LSU.
He did.
So I think he knows what he's doing. And if you want to talk about physicality, and I think A&M was clearly the more physical team in this game. Honestly, this is really the first game where I really felt like LSU just got bullied around. I think the first quarter against South Carolina, it felt like that too, but that might have been more of a mental thing on LSU's behalf. But I think in this game, from really start to finish, they were just beat at the line of scrimmage, simply put.
And it's the exact score from 2022, the last time LSU went there, which was another one of these kind of clunker games where that was the last game of the regular season. I think LSU needed to win that game, and then they would need an epic upset over Georgia to make the playoff. I think a lot of people have chalked that up to, well, they knocked them out of the playoff. Well, yes and no that year. But when you're looking at Brian Kelly and his salary and all the assistants and what they're making, it's a lot of money. And so you look at what Brian Kelly's done. He's done, I think, a solid job. And now it'll be very interesting because if LSU doesn't win Alabama, I think it's going to be a much difficult task to get another one of those 10-win seasons. Now that you got a 12-team playoff, now you're really feeling like with these bowl games are less significant than they were in the past. So this next game against Alabama and the week after at Florida, and then at Vanderbilt at home in Oklahoma, they're fighting like heck to stay in this playoff race.
Yeah, they have to win out in order to make the playoff. I think it's that simple. And even then, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you a spot in the playoff. Other things have to go right for you to get in. You need in Indiana to lose once or twice. You need BYU and Iowa State, these other undefeated Power 5 teams, to start losing a game or two. Those are the sort of things that you need to happen. The ACC is another conference to sort of look at. Pitt's undefeated. I think they're going to lose at some point, but they're still undefeated. Clemson, Miami. I assume both of them will probably end the year undefeated, but who knows?
Yeah.
So like those are the sort of teams that you need losses from, because the SEC is going to kind of take care of itself, because a lot of these teams are going to play against each other. Like LSU plays Bama, Ole Miss plays Georgia, right? Like, and those two teams already have their 2 losses. So these are the sort of things that need to happen. But even then, like, it's hard for LSU, because you didn't think, because that Ole Miss game, because they already have 2 losses and they're probably going to get their 3rd, that might not be as quality of a win as we expected at the very beginning of the year. Same goes with Alabama. They already have 2 losses, and that's something that hasn't happened to them since, 2007?
Yeah.
So,
well, just looking at it, not to interrupt you, but the fact that this game, LSU 16 and Alabama 14, if you add those 2 numbers together, it's 30, Koki. My math is bad, but that's probably the biggest number between these 2 teams in a long time. I mean, typically, certainly during the Les Miles era, every time they met, I think they were both in the top 5, it felt like. Certainly the game of the century in 2011, they were 1 and 2. And then LSU would lose the Alabama game, then they might lose to Arkansas, and then they would drop in the rankings. But many times LSU was in the top 5 playing Alabama. So for both these teams to be ranked in the teens, this is as low as the 2 of them have been ranked in a while. Certainly from Alabama's perspective. Every time you play Alabama, they're 1 or 2 or 3, something like that.
But that's the interesting part about the playoff, right? Like, they're in the teens, but this game is at least as important as those others, because because it is essentially an elimination game for the playoff.
Right. The playoff makes this game much more dramatic.
Exactly.
As a, what do they call it, de facto playoff game or whatever, right? The loser's out and the winner stays alive in that. So I think, from a positive perspective, I think that once you get humbled and once you get embarrassed a little bit, I think that can certainly, you'll be hearing about that for 2 weeks. And I think that LSU will come out with their hair on fire against Alabama. Will they win? I don't know. But I do think, because of what happened in College Station, I think that will help them in their preparation over the next 2 weeks, as opposed to if they would have won and gotten away with some stuff and maybe they're coasting a tad. I don't know. I mean, I know they treat every game the same, and they're supposed to treat every game the same, but these are college kids. They have emotions, and the coaches have emotions as well.
Yeah, and I think defensively that definitely applies, just given how embarrassing it was to give up that many points, despite the fact that they were literally just running more or less the same play on every single play, and people are just going to keep on talking about this Marcel Reed thing and the zone read thing, because they should. But offensively, they have real schematic things they need to figure out, and whether that's just getting really creative in the running game, whether that's sort of opening up the screen game. We really haven't seen them run that many screens, right? Like running back screens, wide receiver screens, just different variations of just easy throws, easy plays that pick up easy yards for Nussmeier, so he doesn't feel like he has to be Superman on every single play. Like, it almost doesn't matter how good you are at quarterback. If you're asked to be Superman on every play, there's gonna be times where you're gonna struggle. Like, we see that with Josh Allen in the NFL. We've seen that with Patrick Mahomes at times. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are if you don't have some of those easy answers to make, to put yourself into better situations where, sometimes you have to be Superman, but you can't put on the cape every single time and expect to get results like, say, the Ole Miss game.
What did Coach Kelly say? He's standing on his head?
Yeah.
Trying to make plays?
Flipping time, yeah.
And Joe Sloan, Joe Sloan's been a solid assistant coach. He's done a solid job, but this is the biggest role of his life in terms of his job. And there's been some talk about the play calling and what are they doing, and is the play calling bad, and this and that. So every play call that works, we quickly forget about it. We don't give him any credit. Every play call that doesn't work, the guy's an idiot. So that's kind of what did Coach Kelly say? Well, maybe not from my perspective. I'm just saying, like Coach Kelly said, what if you win, you're a hero. You lose, you're a bum. So
yeah.
So anyway, we'll see what happens from the offensive coordinator spot moving forward.
Yeah. Joe, I don't know if it's necessarily a play calling thing. It might be more of a design thing, and it might just be, honestly, just trying to adjust and create a new running game when you don't have the cheat code at quarterback anymore, where he was his own rushing offense, right? Because he was just such a dynamic runner and created so many problems for opposing defenses, because every pass play was also a run play with him. And now you just don't have that anymore with Garrett. And part of it's Garrett just needing to be more aggressive on pulling it out and just running it for himself, or running for extra yards on dropbacks, because he is a decent athlete. But a lot of it is just again trying to. We've talked about this a lot, especially during the off season, but like trying to just adjust to this new life of not having. One of the most, exactly, just a dynamic runner quarterback.
The guy that threw the ball 65 yards in the air for the Hail Mary this past weekend. And look, I'm going to say this about Garrett Nussmeier, too. Look, I realize too much is given, much is expected. But he's earned, give maybe is the wrong word, but, you're the quarterback at LSU. And with that comes a lot, especially in today's society of all that. And I saw Garrett Nussmeier. I went to Christ the King, 6 o'clock Mass on Sunday when I got back, and I saw Garrett there. He was at Mass, getting his communion and all that, being a good Catholic boy.
Yeah.
So, I think he cares more than anybody about playing that position. I think that's a lot for a young person to take when they've thrown 3 interceptions. They're walking around campus that everyone knows who you are.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that comes with that for a young person. So I think he'll bounce back, but they do have to help him. I'm not saying that he made some bad decisions, but like you said, if you got no help in the running game and they're teeing off and you start getting hit, you get rattled. It's a natural thing. Tom Brady didn't get touched a whole lot. He was never really rattled all that often.
Yeah, and the thing with Tom Brady, though, that's kind of a good example, is that a lot of those Patriots teams, most of those teams had really good run games, right? And they were very physical up front. They had the greatest offensive line coach potentially of all time, and they had easy answers in the offense. And Brady was able to get the ball out of his hands as faster than anybody in the history of pro football, right? And that's what this offense is missing. They don't have that. They don't have Wes Welker who can get open immediately, and maybe they should do that more with Aaron Anderson. I don't know, and they don't have the screen game. The Pats ran a ton of screens back in the day. Just as someone who grew up in Boston, who kind of knows these things. But
anyway, Kevin Falk.
Yeah, Kevin Falk. That's a perfect example. He was such a great pass catcher, and they used him in those running back screens all the time. But again, you just don't really see that out of this offense. A lot of it's just tough. Multi-step progressions, and Brian Kelly even talked about this, how they're last week about how their completion percentage isn't going to be as high because because of the complexities of their offense, which is great, but at the same time, not everything can just lean on that when you also need like those easy checkdowns, those easy screen
cupcake
passes.
Throws.
Yeah, just running the ball, right? So they need that in this offense, and you really saw it, and it's just impossible to live it that way, especially when you're playing a defense of A&M's caliber, because A&M is a really good defense. I think we should definitely acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, we saw that against Missouri when they played them at home in College Station, 42-10. In that game. All right, well, I think we've pretty much touched upon everything. We talked about the special teams. We talked about the offense. We talked about the defense not being able to adjust. And LSU now looking ahead to the Alabama game, a night game in Tiger Stadium. It'll be rocking. Anything else you want to add? How can people find your stuff? NOLA.com?
Yep, NOLA.com and The Advocate. And I'm on Twitter @Koki Riley.
All right. Thank you, Koki.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on.
You bet. Appreciate it.